I believed that loving someone meant standing beside them, no matter the cost. If you're watching this story from your phone, your living room, or a quiet corner of your life, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. I never thought of myself as extraordinary. I was just a woman who believed in commitment. When I married my husband, I didn't expect perfection. I expected effort. I expected honesty. I believed love was not something you showed only when life was easy, but something you proved when life became heavy. We started with very little. A small home, careful spending, and plans that lived more in conversation than in reality. There were days when hope felt thin, but I held on to it tightly. I believed that if one person stumbled, the other would steady them. That was marriage to me. I was the kind of wife who listened more than she spoke. When he talked about his frustrations, I listened. When he spoke about his dreams, I believed him. When he worried about falling behind others, I reassured him that time would change everything. I told him we were a team, and I meant it with my whole heart. Our marriage had flaws. We argued about money. We argued about time. Sometimes we went to sleep without fixing anything. But even in those moments, I believed one thing remained untouched, our honesty. I trusted that even when the truth was uncomfortable, it still lived between us. Love, I thought, was about patience. Love was about standing firm when things felt uncertain. People say love makes you blind, but I don't think I was blind. I think I chose faith over fear. I chose understanding over doubt. I chose to believe the man I married would never place ambition above our bond. This is what loyalty looks like, I reminded myself whenever something felt slightly off. I adjusted my expectations. I softened my needs. I learned to wait without complaining. I told myself that strong women don't demand, they support. And I wore that belief like armor, proud of my endurance. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply that questioning them felt like betrayal? I believed that sacrifice was not loss, but proof of love. That every quiet compromise was building something solid beneath us. I believed that our marriage, though imperfect, was real, and that real love did not hide. I did not know then that belief without question can slowly turn into silence. I did not know that loyalty, when given to the wrong hands, becomes invisible. But at that moment, in the beginning of this story, I was simply a wife who trusted. A woman who believed her marriage was imperfect, yes, but honest. And sometimes, that belief is the most dangerous comfort of all. An imperfect marriage can survive many things, but it cannot survive a lie hidden behind trust. When he asked me to sign the loan, I thought I was signing our future. He didn't ask all at once. First, he talked about pressure. About how everyone around him was moving ahead while he felt stuck in place. He spoke about opportunity, how close it was, how fragile, how it could disappear if he didn't act quickly. I listened the way a wife listens when she believes her partner's dreams are also her responsibility. Then he talked about money. Not greed. Not luxury. Just survival, he said. A stepping stone. A temporary struggle that would lead to something better for us. He explained how his credit wasn't strong enough yet, how my name, clean, trusted, stable, could open a door that had been closed to him. He didn't pressure me. That's what made it easier. He said, I wouldn't ask if there was another way. He said, this is for us. He said, once I'm established, everything changes. I looked at him and saw the man I married, the one who once promised we'd grow together. I saw his frustration, his wounded pride, his hunger to be more. And I told myself that love sometimes means carrying the heavier weight. Still, I hesitated. Signing a loan isn't romantic. It's cold paper. Black ink. Numbers that don't care about promises. I read every page slowly, my name printed where responsibility lives longest. The room felt quiet in a way that made my thoughts louder. If I don't help him now, am I failing as a wife? Have you ever felt that pause, the moment where your heart says yes, but your instincts whisper something softer, something unsure? He reached for my hand. Not dramatically. Just enough to remind me that we were a team. That whatever this was, we were stepping into it together. He told me it was temporary. That one day we would laugh about how hard it used to be. So I signed. I told myself this was not a loss, but an investment. Not just in his career, but in our marriage. I imagined a future where this sacrifice became a story we told proudly about how we struggled, how we believed, how we made it through. I didn't feel brave. I felt necessary. As the pen left the paper, I felt a strange mix of fear and hope settle into my chest. Fear of the risk. Hope in the reward. I chose hope, because hope had always felt like love's closest companion. He thanked me. He smiled with relief. He kissed my forehead like everything was now safe. I didn't know then that signatures last longer than promises. I didn't know that love, when written into contracts, becomes painfully exact. But in that moment, I believed completely. I believed I was building our future with my own name. I signed with faith, believing the risk I took was an investment in the life we were meant to share. He was moving forward, but somehow I was being left behind. The change didn't happen overnight. It arrived quietly, dressed as progress. His phone started ringing more often. His emails never seemed to end. Meetings stretched longer, dinners grew colder, and excuses became smoother. He spoke about deadlines and expectations, about how success demanded sacrifice. I believed him, because I wanted to. Money began to arrive, slowly at first, then with more confidence. The bills no longer frightened us. The loan payments were on schedule. On paper, everything looked better. But inside our home, something felt thinner, like the air between us had changed. He started correcting me more than listening. Small comments, sharp edges. He dismissed my concerns with tired smiles and quick explanations. When I asked for time, he asked for patience. When I asked for honesty, he gave reassurance instead. I watched him become someone busier, louder in the world, but quieter with me. Our address stayed the same. The same walls. The same furniture. The same routines. But he moved through it differently now, like someone already imagining a place beyond it. His clothes changed. His confidence grew. His presence shrank. Maybe this is just what growth looks like, I told myself. Have you ever felt the distance growing while telling yourself it was temporary? He stopped sharing details. His stories became summaries. His laughter happened elsewhere. When I asked about his day, he said, it was fine, and turned back to his phone. I learned to stop asking questions that seemed to irritate him. Financial stability had arrived, but emotional security had quietly packed its bags. I tried to adjust. I reminded myself that this phase was the price of ambition. That once he reached the place he was chasing, he would come back to us, to me. I held on to the version of him I married, convincing myself he was still there, just busy becoming successful. But success changed the way he looked at me. Not with cruelty. With indifference. As if my support was expected, not remembered. As if the sacrifices we made together had always been his alone. I felt less like a partner and more like part of the background, necessary, but unnoticed. I noticed things I pretended not to see. The way he guarded his phone. The way he corrected my words in public. The way my silence became convenient. Each moment was small, almost invisible on its own. Together, they formed a distance I didn't know how to cross. Still, I stayed. Because I believed love meant waiting. Because I believed this was temporary. Because I believed the man moving ahead would eventually look back. I didn't realize then that sometimes people don't change where they live, they change where they belong. As financial stability arrived, the emotional gap between us grew wider, proving that success can move forward while love is left behind. Every lie arrives quietly, disguised as something reasonable. I didn't wake up one morning knowing the truth. The truth didn't crash into my life. It tiptoed in, wearing the soft face of normal explanations. Small delays. Changed plans. Words that sounded logical enough to accept if you wanted peace more than clarity. He started coming home later than usual. Not suddenly, gradually. First once a week, then twice. Work ran long. A client needed reassurance. It's just a busy season. His voice stayed calm, his face steady. There was no panic, no guilt I could point to. And that made it easier to believe him. The phone became his constant companion. Screen facing down. Silent at night. When it lit up, he tilted it away without thinking. I noticed, but I also noticed how easy it was to look away. If I don't ask, I won't have to hear something I'm not ready for. He started caring more about how he looked. New shirts. Extra time in front of the mirror. A different cologne he said someone at work recommended. I smiled and told him it suited him. Inside, something tightened, but I didn't name it. Why do we explain away what our instincts are already screaming? There were moments, small, sharp moments, that landed and stayed. A receipt from an expensive restaurant he said he'd gone to with a coworker. A name on his phone I didn't recognize, quickly dismissed as someone from the office. A softness in his voice during late-night calls that I hadn't heard in a long time when he spoke to me. None of it was proof. That's what I told myself. And without proof, I believed silence was the mature choice. I believed trust meant not interrogating the person you love. But trust, I was learning, should never require you to erase yourself. His questions changed too. He asked strange things, almost casually. What do wealthy families look for in a man? Do first impressions really matter that much? Should ambition ever slow down for comfort? He asked like he was curious. Like he was curious. Like he wasn't already living out the answers somewhere else. I laughed them off. I told him success was good. That growth was healthy. That I believed in him. And in doing that, I ignored the quiet voice inside me that was growing louder every day. Something is wrong. You know it is. The signs weren't dramatic. They were disciplined. Controlled. Clean. That's why they were easy to miss. He wasn't reckless. He was careful. Careful enough to believe I would never connect the dots. I told myself I was being supportive. Understanding. Patient. I wore those words like armor against the truth. Because admitting something was wrong would mean admitting I had already given too much. So I ignored the signs. I smoothed over the moments. I folded the doubts and put them away like papers I didn't want to read. But denial has a cost. And with every sign I chose not to see, I was unknowingly walking closer to the moment when the truth would no longer whisper, it would speak out loud. The signs were always there, quietly piling up beneath my denial, waiting for the moment they could no longer be ignored. Nothing about that night warned me it would change my life. It began like any other evening. No tension in the air. No arguments left hanging. Just a quiet house and a message on my phone saying he would be late again. Work. Always work. I set my phone down and stood in the kitchen for a moment longer than usual, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of the clock. Everything felt normal. And that was what made it dangerous. I hadn't planned to go out. I hadn't planned to look for anything. But something in me didn't want to sit alone that night. Maybe it was habit finally getting tired of patience. Maybe it was intuition, quietly stepping forward after being ignored for too long. I grabbed my coat and told myself I would just eat somewhere simple. Somewhere familiar. Yet my car turned down a street I rarely took, toward a restaurant he once said was too far, too expensive, too unnecessary. I didn't question it. I just followed the road. This is just dinner, I told myself. Nothing more. The restaurant was warm, softly lit, the kind of place where conversation stayed low and laughter didn't echo. Nothing dramatic. No spotlight. Just people enjoying meals, unaware of how close some truths were sitting to the surface. I stood near the entrance for a second, adjusting my coat, letting my eyes settle. The smell of wine and food wrapped around me, comforting and unfamiliar at the same time. A server approached, polite, professional, with the easy smile of someone who had seen 100 ordinary nights like this one. I told him I was waiting for my husband. My voice didn't shake. I even surprised myself with how calm it sounded. Why did my heart start beating faster if I believed everything was fine? The server glanced at his tablet, then back at me. There was the smallest pause. Barely a second. But it landed like a weight in my chest. He nodded and said he would check. I took a step forward, then stopped. The room felt suddenly larger. Like I had walked into a moment that had been waiting for me all along. Tables were filled with couples, friends, families. Lives unfolding without tension. Without knowing. I told myself I was imagining things. That I was tired. That my mind was playing tricks on me after too many quiet doubts. You're just here to eat, I repeated silently. But something had shifted. The air felt different. Heavier. Charged. As if the night itself was holding its breath. I didn't know then that this was the moment I stopped being a spectator in my own life. I didn't know that a single sentence was about to redraw everything I thought I understood about my marriage. I was still standing in the doorway of an ordinary night. Still believing I was safe inside the story I had chosen to trust. And yet, without realizing it, I had already stepped onto a path that would not let me turn back. What felt like a casual evening was already carrying consequences I couldn't see, but was about to face. The waiter didn't know my name, but he ended my marriage. He came back with the same calm expression, the kind people wear when nothing important is about to happen. His steps were unhurried. His voice was polite, practiced, gentle. There was no warning in his tone, no pause meant to soften what he was about to say. He's already seated, the waiter said. At table 5. I nodded, almost relieved. Of course he was here. Of course I was early. I opened my mouth to thank him, to follow, to continue the evening exactly as I had planned. Then he added the rest. He's here with his fiancée. The word didn't echo. It didn't ring. It didn't crash. It simply landed. Fiancé. Time didn't slow, it stopped. The restaurant didn't fade away, it sharpened. I noticed everything at once, the clink of a glass behind me, the low laugh from another table, the faint hum of music. The world kept moving, completely unaware that something inside me had just gone still. Did he just say fiancé? This is the moment your life divides into before and after. I didn't ask the waiter to repeat himself. I didn't correct him. I didn't laugh or cry or raise my voice. My body stayed perfectly still, as if reacting too quickly might shatter something fragile I hadn't yet identified. The waiter must have seen something change in my face. His eyes softened, just slightly. Not pity, recognition. The look of someone who realizes too late that they have spoken a truth meant for someone else to deliver. "I'm sorry," he added quietly, though he hadn't done anything wrong. I thanked him. Even that surprised me. My voice came out steady, almost distant, like it belonged to someone watching this happen from far away. He gestured down the room, toward the back corner. "Table 5. I followed his hand with my eyes, not my feet. I wasn't ready to move yet. I needed one breath. Just one. There he was. My husband. Sitting with a woman who wasn't me. His posture was relaxed, confident. He was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. Not the polite smile he brought home. The open one. The one that said he felt safe. Chosen. Seen. And across from him sat a woman wearing a ring I recognized. Everything made sense at once. The late nights. The rehearsed explanations. The questions about ambition and appearances. The loan. The distance. All of it lined up so cleanly it almost felt merciful. The truth didn't scream. It didn't accuse. It didn't ask to be understood. It simply stood there, fully formed. I realized then that betrayal doesn't always come with chaos. Sometimes it arrives dressed as normal conversation, delivered by a stranger who has no idea he is holding the final piece. The waiter hadn't meant to expose anything. But the truth doesn't need intention to reveal itself. In a single quiet sentence, time froze, and the truth arrived without drama or apology. In that moment, I understood exactly where my money had gone. I didn't rush toward the table. I didn't call his name. I stood where I was and watched, like someone studying a painting they had unknowingly helped create. From a distance, everything looked polished. Balanced. Intentional. He leaned forward as he spoke to her, attentive in a way he hadn't been with me for a long time. His hands moved confidently, the way they did when he wanted to appear capable, dependable. The man sitting there was not tired. He was not distracted. He was performing a role he had rehearsed carefully. And she believed him. She smiled as he talked. Not politely, comfortably. Her hand rested near his, the ring catching the light every time she moved. I recognized that ring. I had seen it before, hidden away, explained with practiced ease. Now it sat openly, proudly, exactly where it was meant to be. Was this the future I had been financing all along? So this is where my patients ended up. The conversations around them were easy. Laughter came naturally. There was no tension at their table, no fear of being discovered. He belonged there. Or at least, he believed he did. The restaurant, the setting, the woman across from him, this was the life he had been preparing for. I saw it clearly then. The late nights weren't about work. The loan wasn't about opportunity. The questions about wealthy families and appearances weren't curiosity. They were strategy. I had paid for his confidence. I had signed my name under his new identity. I had funded the image he was presenting now. And strangely, I wasn't shaking. The anger I thought would come never did. There was no fire in my chest, no urge to scream or confront him immediately. What settled instead was something colder and sharper. Understanding. He hadn't fallen in love and made a mistake. He had calculated. He had built a bridge using my trust and walked across it without looking back. I watched the way he listened to her. Nodding at the right moments, saying the right things. The way someone does when they know they are being evaluated. Not as a partner, but as an investment. The truth was clear now. I wasn't part of his future because I never fit the picture he wanted to show. I was useful, supportive, necessary, until I wasn't. And that realization did something unexpected. It set me free. Because once you see the full picture, you stop trying to fix the wrong parts. You stop asking what you could have done differently. You stop blaming yourself for someone else's ambition. I wasn't watching my husband betray me. I was watching a man reveal exactly who he had always been. When the truth settled in, anger stayed quiet, and clarity finally took its place. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I planned. I didn't walk toward him that night. I didn't interrupt the life he was displaying so carefully. I turned away, quietly, the way someone leaves a room once they understand the conversation was never meant for them. Outside, the air felt cooler, clearer. I sat in my car for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel, letting my breathing return to normal. There was no rush. No shaking. Just a steady awareness that something inside me had shifted. Wasn't it strange how calm the truth can make you? This is where you stop reacting and start protecting yourself. When I got home, I didn't turn on every light. I moved slowly, deliberately, like someone handling fragile glass. I opened drawers I hadn't touched in months. I gathered bank statements, loan documents, emails, anything with my name on it. Not in anger. In order. Each paper I stacked felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I logged into my accounts and changed passwords. I reviewed authorizations I had once given without hesitation. The trust one had offered freely was now being withdrawn with care. I wasn't erasing the past. I was securing my future. I thought about confronting him. The words I could say. The questions I could ask. But I realized something important in that quiet house: confrontation would give him a stage. And I was done being part of his performance. Silence, in that moment, was strength. I contacted a lawyer the next morning. I didn't tell a dramatic story. I didn't cry. I simply explained what I had done, what I had signed, and what I needed to protect. The facts spoke clearly enough on their own. I cancelled what could be cancelled. I documented what couldn't. I stepped back from anything that tied me to his choices. Each action was small, practical, almost boring to anyone watching from the outside. But inside, it felt powerful. Because preparation doesn't look impressive, but it changes everything. He texted me later that day. Simple. Messages. Where are you? We need to talk. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because there was nothing left to discuss. Explanations don't heal betrayal. Distance does. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. No noise. No arguments playing in my head. Just quiet. I wasn't running away. I was stepping out, carefully, intentionally, with my dignity intact. And in that restraint, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. True power didn't come from confrontation, it came from restraint and quiet preparation. He lost everything the moment I stopped protecting his lie. The consequences didn't arrive loudly. There were no public scenes, no dramatic confrontations. They unfolded quietly, through emails, phone calls, and official notices. The kind of consequences that don't ask for emotion, only truth. Once my name was removed from what it shouldn't have been tied to, the picture changed quickly. Questions were asked. Documents were reviewed. Stories that had sounded impressive no longer held their shape when placed next to facts. Was he ever strong on his own, or was he only standing on what I built? I didn't take anything from him. I only stopped giving. His messages became longer. His tone shifted from confident to uncertain. The man who once dismissed my questions now wanted explanations from me. He wanted time. He wanted understanding. He wanted the protection I had always provided without realizing it. But protection is a choice, not an obligation. Without my silence, his story collapsed. Without my signature, his image cracked. The future he had been presenting to others suddenly required answers he couldn't give. And for the first time, he had to face consequences without someone smoothing the ground in front of him. I moved forward in a different direction. I signed new papers, this time for myself. I chose a smaller space, brighter, quieter, filled with air that didn't feel heavy. I kept only what I needed. I left behind what belonged to a version of me that thought love meant endurance. The independence felt unfamiliar at first. Not lonely, just honest. I noticed how my days became lighter. How decisions felt simpler when they didn't require permission or explanation. I no longer checked my phone expecting disappointment. I no longer waited for someone to come home emotionally unavailable. Freedom didn't arrive with celebration. It arrived with peace. Sometimes I wondered if he understood what he lost. Not the money. Not the position. Not the image. But the woman who believed in him before there was anything to gain. Then I realized it didn't matter. Choosing myself wasn't about teaching him a lesson. It was about closing a chapter that had been draining me quietly for too long. I didn't walk away angry. I walked away clear. And that clarity stayed with me, steady, grounding, unshakable. When I chose myself, I gained independence and emotional freedom, and that was everything.